All right, everyone. Welcome back to all my listeners. This is season 15, episode 11. Today is Wednesday, July 16th, 2025. My name is Sonal Patel, and this is the Paint the Medical Picture podcast series. All right, you guys, I hope you guys are enjoying a wonderful month of July. I know things have been heating up here in the Midwest, and I have been enjoying the hot, sizzling temperatures because I know those days will be over in just a couple of months. So I hope you guys are enjoying whatever summer has in store for you. All right, you guys. So today's episode is going to be featuring Newsworthy spotlight on a recent article that I wrote for BC Advantage magazine on July as another awareness month for healthcare, specifically for UV awareness. And in my trusty tip, I'm going to be focusing on a hot off the press audit conducted by the Office of the Inspector General, the OIG, on ABA services. And I'm going to go ahead and close out and round out today's episode with a remarkable quote on hope and aspirations by T.S Eliot. All right, you guys, let's get into it. So in today's Newsworthy, July is UV Awareness Month. Now, as an editorial board member of BC Advantage magazine, I also contribute to writing articles and delivering webinars for the organization from time to time. Now, I've published an article in their July issue and that I would like to read from. Quote, "It's the middle of summer, so it seems appropriate that it is UV Awareness Month. Whether by the pool, hitting the hiking and biking trails, or simply gardening this summer, it is important to remember that both ultraviolet A, UVA, and ultraviolet B, UVB rays from the sun are harmful to the human body's largest organ, the skin. In fact, skin cancer is the most common cancer in the United States, affecting 1 in 5 Americans by the age of 70. But there are many ways to protect our skin year-round and not become a statistic. According to the American Academy of Dermatology Association, the best way to do this is by seeking shade when appropriate, wearing sun protective clothing, and applying a broad-spectrum, water-resistant sunscreen with an SPF of 30 or higher. Dermatologist recommendations, clothing, and accessories. Here are 5 effective sun protection clothing and accessories recommended by top dermatologists in the nation. Number 1, wear dark-colored, lightweight, long-sleeved shirts and pants. Number 2, wear clothing with an ultraviolet protection factor or UPF marked on the label. Wear dark lens, large frame sunglasses identified as with UV protection. Number 4, wear wide-brimmed hats protecting ears as well as head and neck. And finally, number 5, wear shoes that cover your feet. Dermatologist recommendations, sunscreen. When it comes to sunscreens, it helps prevent sunburns, skin cancer, as well as premature skin aging, including wrinkles and age spots. However, dermatologists can involving effectiveness. Here are some reminders. Number 1, use broad-spectrum UVA and UVB water-resistant sunscreen with an SPF of 30 or higher. Number 2, use enough. Apply 1 ounce of sunscreen to fully cover areas of skin not covered by clothing or shoes. Number 3, apply 15 minutes before going outdoors. Number 4, reapply 1 ounce of sunscreen every 2 hours while outdoors, sweating, or swimming. Number 5, use sunscreen outdoors, even on cloudy days. Number 6, throw out old and expired sunscreen. The Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, requires sunscreens to maintain their efficacy for 3 years from the date of purchase. And finally, number 7, use sun protective clothing and accessories in addition to sunscreen. Skin cancer facts and statistics. Here are some facts from the Skin Cancer Foundation. More than 2 people die of skin cancer in the United States every hour. Having 5 or more sunburns doubles the risk of melanoma. When detected early, the 5-year survival rate for melanoma is 94% for Caucasian patients. When detected early, the 5-year survival rate for melanoma is 70% for African American patients. End quote. And now it's time for my best practice tips in Trusty Tip. Now, the OIG just released their findings from an ABA audit they conducted for claims for Wisconsin Medicaid. Now, you guys know I have been talking about mental health awareness, behavioral health, and ABA types of services for quite a few months here on the past recently. So I found this report to be very important to the everyday work that I am doing. And I am going to be providing a link to this report in my show notes. Now, the title of this report is, quote, Wisconsin made at least $18.5 million in improper fee-for-service Medicaid payments for applied behavior analysis, that's ABA, provided to children diagnosed with autism, end quote. Now, why did the OIG conduct this audit? Well, importantly to note is this is a vulnerable population. Early treatment for autism is important because proper care can reduce children's difficulties while helping them build on their strengths and learn new skills. Although there are other treatments, applied behavior analysis, ABA, is a commonly used therapy for managing autism symptoms. Now, Wisconsin's fee-for-service, or FFS, Medicaid payments for ABA services in the year 2018 totaled $39.9 million. And by the year 2022, these payments had increased to $53.7 million. This audit examined whether Wisconsin's fee-for-service, or FFS, Medicaid payments for ABA services for 2021 and 2022 complied with federal and state requirements. So the report goes into what the OIG found. So Wisconsin's payments for ABA did not fully comply with federal and state requirements. All 100 sampled enrollee months included payments for one or more claims that were improper or potentially improper. Now, their findings included session notes that did not, number one, support the CPT code billed, and they found that in 79 out of those 100 sampled enrollee months. Number two, their findings also included that they did not support the number of units billed, and they identified that in 77 out of those 100 sampled enrollee months. Number three, they also found session notes that did not support the dates of service billed, and they identified that in 16 out of those 100 sampled enrollee months. And finally, their findings included session notes that did not include signatures of rendering providers, and they found that in 9 out of those 100 sampled enrollee months. Now, in addition, for all 100 sampled enrollee months, the state agency, again, I'm talking about Wisconsin, the state agency made potentially improper ABA payments. The OIG identified the following issues with the supporting documentation for these sampled enrollee months. So session notes did not contain a full description of services provided or did not include the goals addressed or data collected. And I believe I've talked about those goals in a previous podcast episode as well. So your treatment plan needs to include those goals, and session notes has to address what types of goals the technician, the therapist is working to address with the enrollee, the young Medicaid enrollee. So those session notes did not contain a full description of services provided, or they did not include the goals addressed or any data collected. And they found that in all 100 sampled enrollee months. Now, session notes also referred to recreational activities that may not have been allowable ABA activities. And they found that in 93 out of those 100 sampled enrollee months. They also identified session notes that included potential non-therapy time. For example, they identified notes that included lunch or naps or travel time, and none of that non-therapy time was subtracted from the units that were billed. And I know I've talked about this in recent episodes as well. So that was another great key finding. And they identified that in 85 of the sampled enrollee months. And finally, they also identified that sessions were billed with an incorrect rendering provider. And they identified that in 54 out of those 100 sampled enrollee months. Now, the full report is a 42 PDF page document, and it's filled with the CPT codes describing various ABA encounters and the OIG's recommendations and observations. I'm just going to read to you a section that I found really, really insightful and useful for the Wisconsin State Agency. So, for example, a section titled, quote, "The state agency did not perform a statewide post-payment review of applied behavior analysis payments and did not provide sufficient guidance to providers," end quote. And this is the section that includes incredibly insightful observations. Quote, "The documentation deficiencies we identified, I mean the OIG, we identified for the 96 sampled enrollee months occurred because the state agency had not performed a statewide post-payment review of ABA payments to ABA facilities to verify that the facilities complied with federal and state requirements since the program began in 2016. Performing periodic post-payment reviews and sharing the results with providers as part of ongoing education may have prevented the state agency from making improper or potentially improper payments. According to state agency officials, the state agency has not conducted a post-payment review of ABA claims because of a Wisconsin Supreme Court ruling in 2020 that altered the state agency's ability to recoup overpayments from post-payment reviews. In addition, the state agency did not provide adequate guidance to providers. The state agency's guidance on ABA CPT codes listed in its handbook contained the allowable CPT codes and their definitions, as well as additional guidance related to protocol modification in their behavioral treatment policy handbook, topic number 18980. Now, the guidance stated that for both comprehensive and focused treatment, services are covered for which the licensed supervisor or treatment therapist resolves issues with or otherwise makes changes to the existing treatment protocol or plan of care to improve outcomes. However, the state agency did not provide guidance on how to document the resolution of issues or changes made to the existing treatment protocol or plan of care. Additionally, a coalition of industry representatives issued guidance that may have led to provider confusion about when to bill CPT code 97155. The issued guidance stated that CPT code 97155 may be billed when a licensed supervisor observes the technician delivering treatment to determine whether the treatment protocol is effective without necessarily implementing a protocol modification as defined by the CPT code description. Because of the state agency's lack of guidance to providers about how to document a 97155 session, providers' session notes did not support that any issues were resolved or changes were made to existing protocols or the plan of care, end quote. So the entire 42-page document is chock full of these insightful recommendations. And Wisconsin State Agency came back with their own responses, and they were rather grateful to this OIG report. They agreed on almost every single one of their findings and will start taking corrective actions as they look deeper into this analysis that the OIG conducted. So I always find these types of reports useful to look at when I'm providing education in a post-payment audit situation myself for my providers throughout the country. So I hope you guys take the time to dive deep into this report if you happen to be working in the behavioral health, specifically the ABA space. So enjoy. And finally, I focus season 15 Spark on hopes and aspirations. I want this 15th season Spark to be filled with our world's thought leaders, writers, artists, philosophers, everyone who inspires us with their statements involving hopes and aspirations. So in this week's inspiring quote, in Spark is from T.S. Eliot. Only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. Absolutely true, right? This quote reminds us to keep pushing ourselves, to keep aiming for better. This quote inspires us to take risks, to take chances. This quote reminds me to keep aspiring for more. I'm happy T.S. Eliot's spark still burns brightly and continues to inspire so very many. All right, you guys, that wraps up today's episode. Now, I hope you guys continue to enjoy whatever the month of July brings to you. And I hope everybody out there is doing well. Give me a shout out soon. Send me a message for the podcast on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or on my YouTube channel. Looking forward to receiving your questions. All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening on today's episode. And I hope every week with me brings you closer to helping your providers paint a masterpiece. See you next Wednesday.